improve your deadlift with better hip mobility. That's what we're going to talk about in this tutorial. What many people think they need to do is lift heavier weight or do a different deadlift variation to improve it. But what we're going to look at are the benefits of mobilizing the hip to improve your deadlift. The mobility we're going to talk about is hip internal rotation and hip external rotation. We can talk about more, but for this tutorial, we're just going to talk about those. Now, why do we want to do it? Well, number one is it helps the hip flex and extend, because not only do our hips, obviously it wants to flex like so, and it wants to extend, but in that movement it requires hip external rotation and internal rotation. So as I go into hip flexion, certainly with the deadlift, is I need that external rotation to get the femurs out the way so I can tip my body forward that much further. So if I've got good hip external rotation, I get the muscle activity out of it, which stabilizes the pelvis, and I get the femurs out of the way so I can then get down and flex that much more effectively. And it's the opposite when I go into extension. So as I come up into standing, I want internal rotation. So if you look at it from the front, I want internal rotation at the top, and I want external rotation, I want internal rotation in extension, and I want external rotation in flexion. Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit there, but essentially when we go into a deadlift, so when I go to lift these up, I want knees out, and then as they come up and in. Now, if I was going further into more extension, I would go into more internal rotation. But what we need the hip to be able to do is that internal and external rotation. It needs that movement. So that's the movements that we're going to try and improve today. What muscles do the deadlifts work? Well, predominantly we want to be accessing the glutes. Depending on the type of deadlift that we're doing, the quads, you will get spinal erectors, you will get hamstrings. What we're talking about with regards to hip internal and external rotation are adductors, glute medius, glute minimus, TFL, psoas. So these are the muscles that we need to be focusing on when it comes to mobilizing that joint, because the quads, the glutes, they're the big power generators. Then we've got the hamstrings and the spinal erectors, which are stabilizing the spine and helping stabilize the knee as well. But for today, we're going to focus on glute medius, glute minimus, TFL, and psoas. We're going to go through a simple 3-step process. First of all, we're going to massage, then we're going to stretch, then we're going to move. So we'll do each of those sections separately, but essentially you will bring them all together into what would be one workout. So what we're going to start to do, because we've talked about glute medius, glute minimus, TFL, psoas and adductors, we're just going to foam roll glute medius, glute minimus, TFL and the adductors. Obviously psoas is very hard to get with a foam roller. The reason I'm using a foam roller, yes, there are different techniques out there, I understand, but it's a very accessible piece of equipment and it's a very simple piece of equipment to use. So when it comes to glute medius, we just go on the side here, and then all we do, stabilize with the foot, stabilize with the elbow, and we just roll back and forth. So we're going between the neck of the femur and the ilium, or the iliac crest at the top of the ilium, and then we're just rolling back and forth. So we're going onto the posterior fibers and the anterior fibers. We can even also get to the TFL doing this as well. So we're just loosening that up. We're just making the tissues more pliable, the tendons, the muscle more pliable. So when it comes to stretching, we'll be able to get a little bit more length out of it. We can also go up and down. It's only a short movement, but we can go up and down. So we would just do that for a minute or two, just opening out glute medius, glute minimus, TFL. Secondly, adductors. Again, a little bit more awkward, but on the side, going right up the inside of the leg. Again, we can walk down, get up high into the adductors, so it's just all up through the inside of the legs. So we're working through and getting those adductors, again, nice and loose. Again, we might just spend a minute or two on there, then we come on to the stretch. Stretches, again, we'll keep simple. We can go through all those different muscles. So we've got the external rotation of the glute medius. We would go into this position, 90-90, and then making sure we take the hip around. Again, we're just stretching through. We can pulse in that if you want, just a short little pulse, gain a little bit of extra momentum. Then for internal rotation, again, very simple. We can just sit back here and we can just turn in and just allow that internal rotation. We can come out and we can feel that stretch going through like so. So very simple, very easy exercises or stretches to do. So that takes care of the internal external rotation. Now the adductors. Again, just keep it simple, get a good stretch. If you need more, take that foot away from this knee and just open out. Get the knee straight, get the back in position, and that will get a nice stretch right down through the adductors. Then when we want psoas, which is the final muscle that we're going to look at, and in part we can get TFL here ever so slightly, we would come into this position. We don't need a big extension of the hip. We can come to here, little extension of the hip, but then the arm goes up. So we get that full range through the psoas because it joins onto T12. So as we extend the thoracic spine, it starts to extend those top portions of psoas. So those are 4 very simple little stretches for you. Now we'll go on to the exercises. Just a couple of simple exercises for you just to get the internal rotation going. Now the first one is very simple. We're just going to stand with our feet parallel, and then all we're going to do is just step round. Now the important bit with this part is to keep this knee pointing forward and that foot pointing forward. So we do get that internal rotation. If we then want the external rotation, we then just turn out and we keep knee and foot pointing forward. So we can go through that whole range of movement. What we can then do is take that to another level. I'm just bringing in a resistance band, but very simply, now I'm just using my hands and I'm just turning and just gaining a little bit of muscle activation along with that hip internal rotation. So just pulling through and again, just using my torso to hold steady and use the hip to turn through. And what you should then find is the muscles start activating. So when you foam roll, you're making it nice and pliable. When you stretch, you're making it longer. Then when you move it, you're making it more active. So you can go through each of those and just create that little workout. Then it's just a case of making sure you've got that extra hip mobility. So when you go into any lower body exercises, you're going to be that much more effective at lifting. If you do need help with your hip mobility, then please just click the link below. If you're in the UK, you can come to this gym and I can take you through consultation, assessment, and a sort of a workout programming and planning session, which you can then take away with you and then apply at your gym. And I make it 2 hours because if you are coming from different parts of the UK, then you need to be here rather than going away, coming back, going away, coming back. So we try and get it all done in that 2 hours. So if you just click the link below, you can go through to my page, you can enter your details, you'll fill out the initial questionnaire, then we'll get you booked in, we'll get you here, and we'll get you through that hip mobility programming workshop.